that's one of the big benefits of being brave, speaking up, sharing thoughts, having those difficult conversations, is that, if we can be mature, if we can be respectful, then there's an opportunity for our minds to open up even greater.
I think we have an opportunity to explore the comfort zone of our inner world, push ourselves up against that resistance in a gentle way, and just share truth from our grounded space and invite others to meet us in that expanded new territory of interconnectedness, and just giving others the permission to speak up and share and be heard and be celebrated and received, and that's where we're going. That was Dr. Susanna and myself. I'm Dr. Benjamin, and we are this week's guests and hosts on the Alter Your Health podcast. This podcast is, as always, your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. And I am Dr. Benjamin Alter. I'm the host, and if it's your first time tuning in, where the heck have you been? Just kidding. But if you're a return listener, I just appreciate you for stopping by again for what I really truly do believe is a wonderful conversation between myself and my beautiful wife, Dr. Susanna, the co-founder of Alter Health, where we, by the way, support you in being your own healer, achieving your ultimate wildest health and wellness goals, providing you all of the knowledge and education and inspiration to understand the fundamentals of whole food, plant-based nutrition, lifestyle medicine, and also the mind-body connection and how your mindset really does influence your experience of health and well-being, which really does lead us to today's conversation of speaking your truth. It is a state of mind. Truth speaking is a state of mind. And we are living in a world where there are a lot of beliefs, a lot of opinions, a lot of conflicting beliefs and opinions, and therefore a lot of argumentation and conflict, whether it is in physical world reality or internet social media reality. I have been in plenty of conflict and argument, Facebook threads, and navigating these conversations with loved ones, with friends, can be difficult, but that doesn't mean that we should restrict ourselves from speaking our truth, because actually that can do more harm than good, and it does do more harm than good. So it's really about grounding oneself in compassion, in peace, in just being present, and then speaking your truth from there. And so, obviously in this conversation, we're talking about the distinction between universal truths and personal truths. We're talking about factual stuff and how to kind of interpret these kind of things, which, by the way, has a lot to do with the feeling, because truth just simply resonates, unlike falsehood, right? Truth resonates, we feel it. We have all experienced, being in the presence of truth, whether it's someone telling us something. We've all experienced the feeling and the aliveness that we personally in our bodies experience when we speak our truth, when we are on purpose in that way. So we're talking about all of these sorts of things, and we're also talking about the collective emergence from the Kali Yuga into the Satya Yuga. And these are Vedic terms that Dr. Susanna kind of explores with us. She, by the way, has a background studying Eastern religion, so we get a little perspective from these philosophical ideologies that really are predicting the evolution of humanity. And I think right now we are very much experiencing this transition from the kind of darkness into the light. And it's not necessarily easy. It's not necessarily comfortable. It definitely invites us to go to our comfort zone and beyond. And that's what this is all about: growth, learning, living, loving. So also we talk a little bit about how our world is to some degree kind of stifling and censoring our empowered ability to speak our truth. That is when it kind of conflicts with different narratives that are out there, right? We see this on Facebook and YouTube and social media platforms that are, quote unquote, fact checking, information out there, for better or for worse, right? Where do we draw the line with all that? So we're not getting into any controversial stuff in this episode. We're just simply speaking fundamental information about just the power and importance of speaking your truth. And really what it comes down to, I've been more inspired to speak my truth lately by seeing and witnessing and feeling others in my world, in my life, stand up and speak their truths and do so from a grounded and empowered place. And that gives me permission to speak my truth, and me speaking my truth hopefully will give you permission to speak your truth. And as we do this, we just collectively ripple out and bloom and blossom and grow together. And that's really what it's all about. So let's dive in, you guys. Let's put our feet on the ground. Let's take a breath. And I hope you enjoyed this wonderful conversation between myself and Dr. Susanna. All right, Dr. Susanna, here we are on the Alter Your Health podcast. We are going to talk today about speaking truth and how important it is for our world, for the collective, and for ourselves individually. And, this topic came up. You put it out there in a poll in the Facebook group, the Plant-Based and Stress-Free Facebook group, where we record conversations on Medicinal Monday and the live episode of this podcast, of course. And you put that topic out there on the poll, and it actually wasn't voted for, but I was voting for it because I wanted to talk about it. And I am glad that it didn't get the vote, actually, because I wanted to talk about it in more of like this sort of setting, rather than just kind of like oriented toward the camera when we're just kind of speaking to the camera. I wanted to talk to you about it. Yeah. So thanks for the idea, and welcome. I mean, you're not like a guest, of course. We're co-hosting this, but we're having a conversation. So thanks for thinking of doing this. And maybe I'll just ask you, what prompted you or inspired you to bring up this topic as a topic to converse about and bring onto the podcast?
Good question. And I will say, before I answer it, that the topic was in a close second place for last week. So I know people in the group are interested in hearing this conversation. And yeah, well, what prompted me was actually a conversation that I had with my sister, because we were talking about current events happening in the world. And, she actually said one sentence that really, it resonated with me very strongly. And so we were emailing to each other actually back and forth about, the possibility that I might have some differing views on things, than her, exactly. And I voiced to her that I was, very nervous to actually bring them up because I've always been nervous to bring up views that may be opposing someone else's views. And her response was, I'm really glad you brought this up because it's important that we have these conversations, and it's important to remember that as human beings, we can converse with one another, in a mature and respectful way, even if we don't agree on everything.
Yeah, it's interesting that your family juxtaposed to my family. My family is much more outspoken in sharing our disagreements, and your family really likes calm, mellow waters. And if someone does maybe not agree with something, usually it's not brought up at least in the large group family dynamic.
Exactly.
So I guess, people probably find themselves in different spaces with regard to how comfortable they feel speaking their truths in the world, speaking how they feel authentically. And yeah, we know how important it is. And, I don't know where you wanted to go with this conversation or where you wanted to start. But I guess we're all probably increasingly sensitive to the fact that there are a lot of differing viewpoints and perspectives on so many things. Of course, the global pandemic scenario and just the global affairs of current events is really kind of bringing to a head what has maybe been kind of festering below the surface for decades and generations. And it's like this, I wrote about it, this kind of collective growth that we're undergoing of maturing and growing up, some more quickly than others. And maybe our whole culture, maybe not as fast as I'm a little bit more impatient, so I want I want it to just happen, right? I want us to just be in a peaceful, harmonious state now.
Yeah.
I don't like the growing pains. But yeah, truth, like, and maybe we also need to define truth.
Yeah.
And like, what do you mean when you say, it's important to speak our truth?
Yeah.
Obviously that doesn't necessarily mean it's important to speak the truth. Like, one's truth might not be the truth. So how do you hold within yourself the distinction between your truth and the truth?
That's a great question, and I don't know if I have a solid answer to it. But really, when we're talking about voicing our own personal truths, what that means is, to me, really speaking what's on your heart and what's on your mind. And so, for example, for me, someone who's been timid her entire life, to speak up.
Is that you?
That's me.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. Someone who's been very timid, because, if I were to kind of classify me as a certain personality, I'd use the word agreeable. I like to really kind of get along with people, and I think that's been part of my insecurity in the past, is that, in order to get people to like me and approve of me, I should really agree with them as much as I can, or at least find the common ground that, where we do see things eye to eye and relate to them in that way. And I love doing that. Like, I that's not something that I see as a bad thing, but at the same time, I see how it has silenced me in really speaking up about my true feelings and thoughts sometimes. And I've come to see how that does myself a disservice, but it also does a disservice to the relationships that I'm in. It is a disservice also to, like what you're talking about, this collective awakening. It's a disservice when anyone holds their truth in. It's a disservice to this greater awakening and evolution that you're talking about. So, to go back to answering your question, it's really just about speaking up. Speaking up when we're really compelled to, when we have that feeling that we have something to share.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that's kind of been up for us is this talk and awareness. I know you know more about this than I do, like the Satya Yuga.
Yeah.
Of how would you define that? What is the Satya Yuga?
Yes. Well, for those who don't know, before I studied naturopathic medicine, I was a comparative religion major in undergrad. Mm-hmm. And I was particularly interested in the Eastern religions, Buddhism and Hinduism. And one of the areas of study in Hinduism was looking into these ancient texts that talk about these yugas. And really, in this ancient text...
Well, what's a yuga?
What's a yuga? It's, so in these texts, they go through, they explain kind of the history of the universe in these cycles, these different phases called yugas. And there's these... as we cycle through these different yugas, they have different characteristics with them. The current yuga that these texts say that humanity is in right now is the Kali Yuga. And if you know Kali, she's a deity that's kind of known as disruption, kind of dark energy, intense energy. This kind of destruction. But, it's a kind of destruction that needs to happen in order for greater truth to prevail.
And Satya means truth.
So the next yuga that these texts say that humanity will enter is the Satya Yuga that comes after the Kali Yuga. And I remember my Hinduism teacher saying that, that we are kind of at the end of this Kali Yuga phase. We will be moving into the Satya Yuga.
So how long do these yugas last? Do you know?
I don't know. No, I have no idea. And you could ask the Hinduism PhDs out there what they think, and I have no idea.
Yeah, and part of me also wonders if there's these energies that are kind of cyclic in nature, maybe like beyond our control, you could say. But also I wonder how much we in our humanness are able to participate in the co-creation and awakening and movement and evolution into the Satya Yuga from the Kali Yuga. Like, if we were really stubborn, could we actually resist that transformation? And what would that be like? And what would the cost of that be? Or is it just inevitable? And it's just how much destruction, quote unquote, or how much suffering is part of the process?
Yeah, it's a good question. But I guess the way I see it is that the kind of awakening, collective awakening into this phase of truth, this era of truth, is inevitable. That's the way I see it.
I totally agree. And it's just
it's happening.
And it's happening. But it's like, well, if that is the case, if it is happening, and I think that we can agree that it is, then what is our human responsibility in participation with that happening?
Speaking your truth. That's one.
Yeah.
That's one. And that is why I wanted to talk about it today. But how would you answer that question?
What is the human responsibility in participation with the collective shift?
Yeah.
Whatever we want to call it, whatever we want to label it as. Well, I think we might as well label it as the Satya Yuga, since it was written down thousands of years ago. And it's just, so the human responsibility is being grounded and present. And, I like to focus on the universal truths, and going back to just defining truth and really wrapping our minds around truth. I think that if we can really be rooted in the core principle, fundamental universal truths that we can't really argue with or debate, and just kind of live from there, then all the other truths become more apparent and bubble up from there. And I guess the most significant and important universal truth to embrace and identify with is the truth of the soul being really who we are, and not our body, not our humanness, but beyond that, the core of who we are is this, fully awake, fully healthy, fully conscious, fully loving, fully perfect, essence that is our soul. And I think that the individual awakening process of life that happens throughout life is becoming more aware and identifying more with that soul. And then on a bigger collective level, it's like that's happening more and more. I love how different people speak to kind of the flowering of consciousness, and how, flowers are always blooming all over, everywhere in nature. There's always lights, every year the flowers bloom. But it's like what is happening now is like a super bloom. It's like a total full bloom, full field of wildflowers just happening right now. And yeah, so as we can just feel and resonate with that inherent universal truth, then that's the most important thing. Which, as I'm saying it right now, I'm realizing that for a lot of people it might feel kind of crazy or not scientific. When we're talking about truth, I think a lot of people jump to science and like, what can we measure and weigh and what can we really hang our hats on as being factual.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about
goes beyond that.
Is not really something that we can measure, at least not in today's measurement world. But nevertheless, when we just observe the natural world and we see the divine perfection, in all things, in all life, including each one of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's a very interesting time right now because like what you're saying, I'd say society finds its truth in these scientific arguments or factual evidence, right? Looking at the facts. And going back to the Yugas, the Kali Yuga, it's associated with lots of discord, lots of contention. And so, it lines up with the ancient texts that right now we are having a lot of these debates in society. And, we could look at it and say, that's a bad thing. I think in the past, certainly someone who likes to maintain peace and, get people to get along and stuff like that, I would look at all these arguments happening and say, this is horrible. We need to come together. And yes, we do need to come together, but there's power in these arguments. There's really a lot of power in all of these people standing up and saying, speaking what they see to be true and having these conversations with one another, these difficult conversations with one another, not just brushing things under the rug, because it really is these arguments that they need to happen. I would argue that they need to happen in order for things to shift, things to change. If we didn't talk about things, then they would just stay the same, right?
Yeah, we need to have these difficult conversations. And, conversations are difficult, but once we start having them, then it's not as difficult as maybe we thought.
Right.
Or, we start to break through and like you were talking about, seeing and feeling and experiencing the common ground. But one thing that just is popping into my awareness is how so many of us are so resistant to having these difficult conversations, to the point that we unfriend, unfollow, block anyone who invites in the most loving and gentle way a conversation that is, quote unquote, difficult or contrary or, away from the narrative that is desired.
Right.
Speaking from personal experience, just having been unfriended and unfollowed and blocked. And honestly, it's like every, I'll defend myself real quickly. Like every time I do make a comment, make a post, like or heart or whatever it is, I'm really thinking about like, how can I move this forward? Like, not how can I rile this person up? How can I make them mad? How can I change them? How can I fix their view? Like, how can I move forward? And some people, I guess, are unwilling, at least from me. I know that there's billions of people on the planet, and, I'm not going to move everyone forward, and everyone else isn't going to move me forward. That's not my responsibility. But anyways, I do feel connected with that intention of just moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's so interesting because you and I are very different in this sense of I would say you've always been someone who's very outspoken about your
Not
not
always. Yeah.
always, but in certain scenarios you stand up and you are very vocal
Well,
about
only in the last few years.
only in the last few years.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
4. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Ever since you started dating me. Remember we made that connection.
I don't remember. I mean,
We were talking with our here's our woo woo coming out. We
oh,
were talking with our astrologist and you said
astrologist.
astrologer. Yeah, our astrologer. And you connected the dots like, "Oh yeah, it really was when I started dating Susanna when there was
Oh,
this level of comfort to really come out and speak."
yeah. I guess. I
Anyway,
mean, yeah. What's coming to mind for me is like the wrapping up medical school and just really, being kind of rubbed the wrong way with the politics within the medical school. And that was when I started to speak up.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was after we were dating for a couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's funny because when I enter or when I want to enter a conversation with someone that where I'm bringing a different point of view to the table, for me, there's a lot of insecure thoughts that come up about like, oh well, I don't like, what if this person thinks I'm crazy? Or I don't want them to think differently of me. I don't want them to not like me anymore. Those are just some of the insecure thoughts that have kept me from really speaking up. And what's it like for you? I feel like this is interesting to bring up because for the listeners, I just want to point out, the underlying factor that keeps us from speaking out, right? I want to highlight that so that we can
Well, I think it's
really call it out.
I think it's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, you don't want people to think differently of you. You don't want people to. Well, how else would you fill in the blank there?
Yeah, really. I just don't want people to not like me.
Don't want people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. I feel like there's plenty of people who don't like me already, and I don't really care. Well, I do care. I do care that I'm not liked, but I am so bad at being fake that I don't know when that clicked for me, that it just wasn't a sustainable, feasible way to attract and maintain friends or followers or whatever. But that being said, I can certainly relate that there have been periods in my life where, I do want, I don't want to ruffle the feathers, and I do want to maintain a level of comfort and have, bitten my tongue. I do bite my tongue. I do hold my thoughts in more often than not, for sure. Absolutely. And, I guess what's prompted this conversation about speaking truth and sharing truth is feeling the aliveness and the expansion that comes from peacefully, lovingly sharing my truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's like a high that I get now. It not like, oh, I gotta go find some more truth to share. Like I gotta go dig up something so I can post it and share it and talk about it. Not like that, but just being in the continuous flow of speaking up, being myself, especially, and this is the interesting thing where probably my ego comes in, like, especially when my truth is contradicts what most other people see as true. And like, there's something that's like juicy about the contradiction. And I think that there's certainly no shortage of drama in our world, especially today. So it's just interesting that I've never been a dramatic person at all. But I can kind of start to feel my ego like, ooh, yeah, this truth that I resonate with, that feels true for me, is totally contrary to what's held. So it satisfies not only my soul to share my truth, but also it's satisfying like my ego in the dramatic, like, I don't know, it's just like the maintains this drama, which is honestly, I know a lot, like, it's becoming entertaining, and
Yeah, I
it's
know you have fun with it.
it's just it's becoming a source of entertainment. Not that I'm addicted or attached to continuing the entertainment, but I think that's just the way that I am getting through these crazy times, is just keeping myself entertained and kind of a light-hearted, like, just seeing the unfolding of what's happening as like a movie, because honestly, it's better than any movie could ever be. Like, what's happening.
Well, I think what I'm really hearing also in what you're saying, and this helps to clarify my answer to your original question of what does it mean to speak one's truth, is that it really comes down to following the good feeling, which is something we bring up in a lot of our other podcast episodes when we're talking about following wisdom and following our own individual inspiration. And I mean, I think everyone probably knows how icky it can feel to silence oneself, to suppress oneself. It feels awful. That's a feeling I've become very used to be honest, is like the feeling of sheepishly kind of standing back and just I'll just wait for that uncomfortable feeling to pass. But there's some beautiful quote about, it's about like a blooming of a blossom where, gosh, what is that quote?
There came a point in time where the anisneen, what's the anisneen?
Yeah, exactly. That's the quote.
There came a point at which the flower, the energy to
the pain of not blooming overcame the fear of blooming, or something like that.
Something to that effect.
But that's always what I think about, where it's like at a certain point, and I've had this in my life, at a certain point it felt so uncomfortable to not speak up that I would rather face the fear, which is also an uncomfortable feeling. I would rather have that uncomfortable feeling of fear than the uncomfortable feeling of suppressing myself.
Yeah.
And so, when you're saying that, like, you've been enjoying, like, it's been feeling really good and energizing for you to speak out, to me it's like you're just following your wisdom. Because there's going to be situations where we're going to have thoughts that we don't necessarily have to share with others, right? If, like, oh, let's say I have a judgment about so-and-so. I don't need to say that to them every time.
Yeah, like, oh, what do you think about this dress? It's terrible. It's ugly. What do you think about my haircut? Am I getting fat?
Right.
Like, we don't have to, like, that doesn't come along with a good, positive, uplifting feeling.
Right.
Sharing those truths.
Right. But yeah, when we're so compelled, when there's that feeling of, oh, I just really want to share this, then we should do ourselves the favor and do the world the favor of following that. And yeah, I mean, this has been a big truth for me that I realized in the last few years that maybe I haven't been practicing so much recently. But we're all here. We're all divine beings having a human experience. We all have a voice for a reason. And if we don't use the gifts that we were given to really follow that innate wisdom, to express ourselves to the fullest capacity, then we're I already used the word, we're doing a disservice, and I but really, we're basically kind of like, I don't know what I'm looking for, the word I'm looking for.
Disservice.
Yeah, we're doing a disservice to the entire world because we're here not only to fulfill our own personal goals and stuff like that and have a happy, healthy life or whatever. I mean, that's great that we can do that, but we're also here for a bigger purpose, a bigger collective purpose.
Yeah. Well, and that has become apparent to me as I see more and more people speaking and sharing their truth it gives me a feeling of permission and inspiration to speak my truth. I speak my truth and I get feedback from others saying, oh, thank you for doing that. It made me feel like I can speak my truth. So there is this literal rippling out of empowered truth speakers and sharers that is one and the same with that widespread flowering of consciousness. And it's meeting resistance also. And that's one thing that I thought that would be important to share and talk about in this conversation as well, is the resistance to the truth. You know, not many people are open to and able to receive the truth, someone's truth. And there's this collective resistance in the form of censorship on, you know, the technology companies and whatnot, that's really censoring and quieting and silencing people who are speaking a truth, maybe not the truth, but a truth, someone's truth that doesn't mesh well with another story. You know, the conflict there is real and palpable. And that resistance that is, I think, kind of sometimes scary. I think it is scary, but that resistance is like fuel. That's fueling and empowering and motivating and further, hopefully, you know, for me, it feels like fuel. I think for our collective, it's a level, a degree of fuel that's just reminding us like, oh yeah, like I do need to speak my truth. It is that important. And I hope that more and more of us feel inspired to face that fear, to face that resistance, and to speak up with our individual truth. Once again, not quote unquote the ultimate truth, maybe not. We don't know the ultimate truth when it comes to current global affairs, but our truth.
Yeah, no, that is happening. The censorship is happening, and it is really scary. And I've heard people say that that people bringing up these alternative views and opinions is detrimental. It's harmful because for people who can't make up their own minds and are just really gullible, they're at risk, or you know, whatever it is. But I would really argue that, again, back to the point, it's essential for people to bring up these alternative points of views. And and
we're all able to connect with our truth.
We are all able to connect with our truth and make up our own minds.
And we're all gullible, and we're all not gullible. Like, we're all going to see and hear and believe what meshes with what we want to and what our worldview is in the moment.
Yeah.
And for to have someone or some entity or some small group of people, whatever it is, trying to dictate what we should be open to, it's dangerous and scary. And it just kind of really is at odds with the humanity and our collective evolution.
Right. And you know, I think a lot of this, I've had a lot of moments where I've, you know, found myself kind of observing certain debates happening, and I look at it and say, well, you know, I guess I can't really know what is true. This person says this is true. This person says that is true. It's kind of his word against her word. And
he said, she said.
He said, she said. Exactly. And like what you were saying, Ben, it's like I think part of the human journey is connecting with one's own resonant truth at our core. Like what makes sense to you, you know?
Totally.
We all have that ability to feel within ourselves what feels true.
Absolutely. And that, to me, thank you for bringing that up. That is the truth. Like, it might not, like, it's the capital truth. It might not be, and this is where things get messy, right? Because it's like the capital T truth that resonates, that we can't really deny that resonance, that feeling, maybe or maybe it isn't. Like the fact of the matter of what we know in the moment, right? Based on current data, statistics, information, maybe it isn't the so-called truth as we know it in the moment based on our limited human understanding, but there is a deeper energetic resonance that we feel and experience in our being. And I think we've all had an experience of resonating and feeling and hearing the truth. And I think that same resonance, that same chord that's struck within us is also struck when we share and speak truth, our truth.
Yeah.
It's the same it's the same chord that's struck, and it's a chord that is harmonious with health and vitality and inspiration, like I was sharing before about just feeling like high when I speak up well. I'm not talking about like arguing, right? I'm not talking about conflict. I'm not talking about just simply being contrary and poking a fight on Facebook. I'm talking about speaking up and sharing authentically, grounded in peace and compassion. And there is a high that I get from doing that. And that high is one that promotes health, right? And it's one that promotes health in the basic core of who we are, our cells.
Because you're following your own wisdom. You're living in line with your purpose.
And also like that energy, that aliveness, that openness, that expansion, that feeling is one that it literally is just activating the nervous system in a way that's promoting circulation and lowering blood pressure and healthy hormones and all of the things. And we feel that.
Yeah.
And then we just think about, these moments of resonant truth that might be few and far between, might be, once a week that we feel this real inspired flush of truth hormones throughout our body. But we think about the flip side of that, the multiple moments of constriction and falsification and suppression and tension that is created in the body when we're not in that alignment. And, not to scare people out there of like, ooh, be scared of that, that physiologic state, but it's just really empowering and important information to continue moving in a direction where we're resonating and seeking that aliveness that comes through speaking and feeling truth.
Right. Yeah. And this actually came up in our last podcast episode on thyroid health about how the fifth chakra in our in our throat, the energy center that is associated with speaking our truth. And not that I'm an Ayurvedic expert or anything, but I think that like what you're saying, Ben, this the consequences of suppressing ourselves in that way and creating that constriction and tension in our body, it impairs health, and maybe it's localized to the throat, maybe it's not, but either way, yes, it is going to create a physiological state that is not ideal for lasting health.
So I wanted to also talk about and ask your opinions and feedback around, like, when I thought to have this conversation, when you thought to have this conversation, I thought it would be great to give kind of like how to how to share your truth healthfully. And I honestly am totally a work in progress, totally in the steep learning curve of this. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on.
Before we transition to that, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Because this became very clear to me when I was emailing back and forth with my sister as well. Because, as human beings, our ego really, really likes to be right. right? And most of the time,
my ego likes to be the most right.
yeah, and
more than yours.
a lot of times we're walking around wanting to get people to see things the way that we see it, right? That's what's behind a lot of arguments and debates, right? Yeah, and so, I witnessed that as I was kind of bringing up this new point of view in this email to my sister. There was definitely part of me that was like, oh, I really want her to like see it the way that I see it. And, her response was neither really I agree or I disagree. But, her response brought up a lot of really good questions that I hadn't yet considered. And so it got me thinking differently. It opened up my mind even more to even more infinite possibilities. And what I saw from that conversation was that that's one of the big benefits of being brave, speaking up, sharing thoughts, having those difficult conversations, is that, if we can be mature, if we can be respectful, then there's an opportunity for our minds to open up even greater, to an even greater degree. And it's not like that conversation really helped me decide, oh, I think this is the truth or that is the truth. But it really helped me remember that underneath all of those kind of the superficial kind of arguments, it helped me remember, again, like what I said in the very beginning of this conversation, that as human beings, we can still connect with one another on that deep level, have a conversation with one another and not rip each other's heads off and act like little children and block each other and just stuff like that. And what can come from those conversations is people, just all of a sudden opening up to new possibilities in different ways. And that's the process of growing and evolution to me. Without having that, oh, I never really thought about it that way, then none of us would really grow or evolve. Nothing would change. Everything would be the same. So I guess I bring that up because it was humbling. But I think it's that humbling process that, again, is what helps us grow.
Yeah, and really, as you were sharing that, and I'm grateful that you did, I was kind of, what was coming through me was this other universal truth of connectedness and interconnectedness. And it's like this infinite well of total unknown. Like, we don't know anything. So if we just lay down what we think we know, that is how we open up to knowing more.
Mm-hmm.
And like, all brilliant people that I know would agree that the more we know, the more we think we know, the less we know. The more we know, the less we know. I don't know. But the fact being that, like, there is this truth, and it does resonate, right? It does resonate to just drop it, and it does feel true to just like let it all down, because all this physical world reality stuff that we're trying to grasp onto to make our point and prove ourselves, really, that is not what matters. And of course it matters in the 21st century and all these new things that are going on. Like, there are things that matter, and we are being riled up to and awoken to these things that actually touch close to home. But really, if we can like fall back beyond that and let all that down, then we can have greater access to and connection with the ultimate interconnectedness.
Yeah. And it doesn't happen when we just sit in an echo chamber all day.
Yeah.
And we just talk with people who see things the exact same way that we see it. So, when we're speaking here today saying, hey, everyone out there, you really got to speak your truth. We're not just talking to people who see things the way that we see it. Like, I'm talking to everyone. I'm talking to the people who have the opposite viewpoint to me, because
well, luckily we haven't like expressed any of our viewpoints, and that's not the point of this.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the point of what I'm saying is that everyone speaking up, no matter what their viewpoint is, no matter if you look at them and you're like, you are so crazy. It's like they are just as important for the collective awakening as every other person is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so we're all in this together. And yeah, we're all in it together.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously another really important point, the whole echo chamber thing, that social media has really done us a disservice in that sense of allowing us to totally manufacture and create the worldview that we want to hold on to. And in the form of just, like it happens to me, being unfollowed, unfriended, blocked, and just literally creating your news feed that literally feeds you exactly what you want to see and hear. And if you don't want it, and if you don't like it, then you can click a button and make it disappear. Exactly. And then the algorithms are set up in a way so that you get more of what you do want. That does reaffirm to you the feeling, that superficial feeling of being right, of having the correct kind of viewpoint and opinion, while making this muscle of collaboration and this muscle of open-mindedness like just kind of atrophy. Our open-mindedness, like I believe we are open-minded by our human nature, like we have to be, and that open-mindedness is closing as a result of what's happening.
And the muscle of our critical thinking is also atrophying as well when we live in an echo chamber.
So there's so many other kind of things that we could cover on the topic of truth. What's coming to me is like science, and how science is kind of like tainted and has been for quite some time, and just the corruption and everything, and the misinformation, and the mainstream media, like, tampering with what people's words, literally, like the words that people are saying are being, brought out of context to just paint a totally different picture than what is actually going on. Anyways, like there's so much that we don't need to get into in that regard. But I do think that it's the intention of this conversation, which I think has been made apparent, is just to continue evolving the conversation of truth and promoting and supporting truth speakers and truth sharers, and inviting people to continue doing that from a place of peace and interconnectedness and an intention of love and awakening. So what kind of advice or how might one who is scared or timid or shy go about opening up to speaking one's truth in a way that might bring them out of their comfort zone, but for the purpose of the collective and individual awakening process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'll speak as someone who kind of fits that description. And it's not so different from, what we talk about in our other podcast episodes, because it's all the same. But, I think it's really important, and I'm speaking to myself here, that one doesn't like force themselves to do anything if it doesn't feel like it's the right timing, because the truth is that everything unfolds in the perfect timing, right? And so to answer your question, it's like it simply boils down to following your innate wisdom, attuning to your body's sensations, and seeing, okay, where is that good feeling, and following that good feeling. And for me, like, oh, does it does it feel good? Does it feel good to bring this up right now with this person? Or does it feel not good? And even if it's fear creating the constriction, because I know that's kind of maybe what you're gonna say.
I'm curious about, because comfort is also a good feeling. Being in our comfort bubble, like just kind of sitting on the couch and watching our shows. And
yeah, but at a certain point, I mean, I feel like maybe a lot of us can relate to this. It's like you can only sit on your comfy couch for so long before it starts to feel uncomfortable. Before you get inspired to do something else and you feel a need to go do something else, right?
Well, yeah. So what I'm hearing you say, or my interpretation of what you're saying, is to become sensitive to the slightest inspiration that's moving you off of your comfy couch and into a place of expanded newness.
Exactly. This example is coming up because it's been so it's created such a profound shift in my life, and it has to do with our relationship. And I feel like this is a very good kind of benign example to bring up. And like in the past, I used to just have a feeling of like, oh, Ben just said something to me or did something that like, I'm offended by, so I'm gonna speak up and stand up for myself. And I would.
Oh, yeah, I remember that phase.
I would, but it came from a bad feeling.
And it wasn't very productive because
it wasn't productive.
Yeah.
It came from a feeling of like, I'm hurt and I need to like give him a piece of my mind, with that kind of tone with it. Yeah. And it wasn't very productive. And the insight I had, and my coach helped me it was a book. It was the Relationship Handbook by the Pranskys, where, it just clicked in my head like, whenever I share from that negative feeling, it doesn't lead to anything good. But when I share from a grounded, peaceful place inside, like magic happens.
Yeah. And sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So I made an agreement with myself to, and I slip up here and now, but I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at following this agreement I made with myself to not speak up when I feel that icky feeling. And the result has been that you and I have had way fewer tiffs, arguments, stupid, unproductive arguments, I might say.
Yeah, the ones that last like 3 or 5 minutes.
Right. And then, when I do feel ready to speak up, either the thing, kind of passes and it's a non-issue. When I calm myself down, I can see things more clearly and I see, oh, okay, actually, Ben didn't do anything wrong. I just like made up this story in my head, or I took things way too personally. But if there is something that I really feel like I need to talk to you about, I'll wait until I have that grounded clarity in myself, where there's still a feeling of this is important to bring up. Then I'll bring it up with you, and usually it leads to a more productive conversation where we can actually start to open each other's minds a little bit. Yeah.
Good stuff.
So anyway, when I think about translating that to, any conversation with anyone, the same rule would still apply for me. And, to wait until I have that strong feeling of clarity.
Cool.
Yeah. What about you?
What about me? What?
What advice, in quotes?
Yeah, well, as what the advice that I'm giving to myself, what's coming to my mind right now is all of the interaction that happens on social media, YouTube comments, Instagram comments, Facebook comments, whatever. There is such incredible room for passive aggressiveness and sarcasm and just unauthentic, unloving, uncompassionate, motivated words. I've found myself in recent times, in the last couple of weeks, just really being mindful of where my comments are coming from. And really just, centering myself, like literally just like putting my feet on the ground and centering myself before my fingers type out a little response. Because even if my comments are completely loving, I want to make sure, or completely neutral, completely curious, like not sarcasm, not passive aggressiveness. I want to make sure that I am able to convey that message from a place of that I desire. Because also all too often, the message sent is not the message received. So I want to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence to send the message that I really want to be received. So that seems to be like a practical thing, is of really just, do unto others as others, say to others, don't.
The golden rule.
The golden rule. I can't even recite the golden rule. Do unto others as others would do to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like treat others with the same level of respect and love that you desire. And also, treat myself with the same love and respect that I desire. Because I think that self-criticism is just as or more detrimental than criticism of others. And how are we supposed to be compassionate and understanding and loving of our brothers and sisters if we don't hold that level of understanding for ourselves? So that's really important to me. And I think like it seems so easy. It seems so easy and so simple and so doable. It seems so doable if only the golden rule can be followed to a deeper, greater degree. And maybe that's what this Satya Yuga is about, is just like really just simplifying our philosophical approach to life and kindness and love and
Yeah. Those are all the qualities that are associated with the Satya Yuga.
Yeah. And then, also like I brought up before, just I like personally, I love exploring the boundaries of my comfort zone in different ways. And it used to be like more out in the world, adventure stuff, exercising, traveling, these kind of things. And obviously not many of us are doing all the out in the world adventure stuff, but I think we have an opportunity to explore the comfort zone of our inner world and, push ourselves up against that resistance in a gentle way and just share truth from our grounded space and invite others to meet us in that expanded new territory of interconnectedness and, just giving others the permission to speak up and share and be heard and be celebrated and received. And, that's where we're going.
Totally. As you've been talking, it's crystallized a little bit more for me how to articulate this. Because as I was sharing before, you said, but isn't there, like, what about
the comfort zone?
What about getting stuck in the comfort zone? What about letting the fear kind of suppress ourselves? And really, what I have found as someone who does have more fear around communicating certain things is that even like if there is that sensation of fear as well, that is a sensation, or it means that there are a lot of thoughts clouding our connection with our innate clarity and wisdom inside. So even if I were to kind of muscle through the fear and speak, it might not come out as grounded and clear as maybe I'd like it to be, and that's okay because we're human and it's fine. You're still speaking your truth, and that's great.
It's messy. However,
I've found that typically if I just kind of wait until the fear passes and the clarity comes, with that clarity comes more confidence And so that when the time does come for me to speak my truth, I am more grounded. I have more clarity, and the energy that my words are riding on is it's that energy that we're talking about here of just, really sharing from that deep, authentic place. And typically, truth. And typically, when we share from that place, it actually is more received. It's more well received, and
it's more powerful.
So, for people who tend to be like me, a little bit fearful, I'm not saying one way or the other, like you should muscle through your fear or you should just hang back and wait. But for me, that's been an insight that I've had, and I think I'm going with it. Feels
cool.
Good.
Yeah. One other thing that came to mind for me as well. It's funny, like you got your first round of answers. I got my first round. You got your second round. Now another thing that's coming for me, which is also for me, advice for me, is to, like you brought up earlier, let go of this desire to change something or somebody, specifically somebody's beliefs. It's the way that somebody sees something. That's definitely, regardless of what I tell myself, like there is this background tendency to desire to change someone's perspective. I'll even say, like, listen, I totally respect and totally accept your viewpoint, but let me say this. And there's always this, 2% energy of just maybe they'll change. Maybe they will have a shift of consciousness, a change of perception. Maybe they will open up their mind in this direction a little bit. And if I can let go of that 2%, sometimes it's 20%, sometimes it's 95% of wanting things to change. But if I can let go of that and really accept and embrace the total perfection of where that person is, and it's like when we're seeing patients and clients, like we know that the healing power of nature is alive in each one of that person's cells, and there's like our responsibility is not to fix them, it's not to heal them, it's not to cure them, it's to provide them the resources and insight and inspiration and environment for their bodies to heal themselves. So when I'm kind of in communication with others, I want to show up in a way that invites that person to be totally aligned and inspired and in their authentic connection with their wisdom. I don't want to force or overpower or dominate my viewpoint onto them. I want to engage in a conversation that just invites our mutual highest selves to be one together, and from that place have a collective shift of consciousness, have a collective open-minded experience, and see new things together in kind of a synergistic way. I hope that I can start moving in that direction in my dialogues with people, whether it's in person, on Zoom, or on a Facebook comment thread. I hope that can be, we can move in that direction.
Yeah, like with anything, the individual needs to have their own personal insight for it to become truth for them. So
100%.
Yeah.
Well, any other last things? And I think we covered a lot in this.
This is such a great conversation.
I think it is a great
conversation. About it. Well, I just thought it would be kind of fun to maybe bring some more kind of concrete examples of people speaking their truth and great change happening from it. You
mean like historically or what?
Yeah, historically. Like, think of Martin Luther King Jr., think of, like this example came up recently, how for a long time it was widely believed that cigarettes were actually good for you. And if it weren't for the people who challenged that and spoke up, then we would all still be killing ourselves by smoking these horrible, cancer sticks. So.
Yeah, no, there's Exactly. Like,
Who else? So many examples, right?
no, that is how change happens.
Yeah.
Change doesn't happen by just blind following.
Yeah.
Like, change does not happen by blindly following what other people are saying. Change happens by not necessarily challenging or arguing or conflicting with, but questioning.
Yeah.
And conversing and cooperating and collaborating.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely need more questioning. We definitely need more collaboration, and we don't need more conflict. We don't need that, but conflict can be okay as well, as long as we're grounded in some awareness of our peaceful essence. Fighting is part of being human, I think. And as long as we're able to drop our swords and hopefully not do too much damage, then we can come together after the matter.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else?
Nope.
Any other Alter Health announcements or anything?
Well, we have upcoming on May 25th, our next Whole Food Plant-Based Challenge. And this Whole Food Plant-Based Challenge, we are actually focusing in on increasing inner peace and stressing less. It is our stress-free series. So I'm actually really excited for it. It's going to be interesting because usually in these Whole Food Plant-Based Challenges, we focus on really the physical aspect of healing.
Yeah.
And this is the first time we're bringing in this other dimension of mindset,
Yeah,
really.
well, usually it's 95% physical nutrition stuff and 5% just kind of and your mindset matters.
Yeah.
and now I don't think it'll be 95% in mindset. We're still going to cover a lot of physical nutrition.
It'll be more like 50-50, I think.
Maybe 50-50.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 50-50 is good.
It'll be good.
So yeah, Whole Food Plant-Based Challenge starting May 25th. You can sign up at alter.health/WFPB-challenge. And I'm also excited about that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just appreciate you for tuning in out there, listeners. I don't know where to look, but appreciate your presence. Appreciate you speaking up and sharing your truth. If this message does resonate, definitely, share this conversation with anyone that you know and love. And just look forward to staying in touch. You can feel free to join our Facebook group where a lot of good stuff is happening, predominantly the whole food plant-based stuff, but also truth sharing and truth speaking. We invite that in any and all forms in that forum as well. Plant-based and stress-free, www.facebook.com/groups/alterhealth. And yeah.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. Peace and love. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye for now.